Oh, man. It's a little stormy out there, Anthony, I gotta say. Let me just towel off here. Boy, I just swam in from Europe, and boy, are my arms tired,
Yeah. Well, it's nice of you to join me. I mean, I was waiting for a few minutes there. I thought you were a better swimmer than that, but you've done well. You've done well, I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm a little rusty. It's swimming in a simulation is always more difficult. The waves are kind of glitchy, and they don't have all the mechanics worked out yet on that. So
yeah, I should try it sometime, I think.
They spend more time on the whirlpool. In any case, thanks for joining me, Anthony, from Culture Cave, an outstanding YouTube channel. I've known about you for several years, going back to Dark, which I think both of us say is our favorite TV show or the best TV show ever. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just don't have any arguments against it. Like, if anyone can give me one, I'm happy to have. I'm very open-minded, but I just haven't found a good argument against that yet.
Yeah, it's outstanding, and I really think they stuck the landing. And we'll talk about Dark a different time. I'd love to have you on to do that. Let me just put your name on the screen here. Boom, Anthony, there you are.
Love
it. Very fancy. So I am David Lightbringer. I have a mythical astronomy, of Ice and Fire channel. I'm talking about House of the Dragon, all that stuff. But I am here on my new channel to talk about 1899, Dark, and all kinds of other stuff. So thanks for joining me on, I don't know if this will be my first or second video. We're not quite sure yet, but I'm recording stuff. And it's a very honor to have you on. You did a great job on Dark, and building up to 1899, you were first with all of the leaks and the info, not really leaks, but just a little tidbits that Baron and Yante drip out on Instagram. So appreciate that. And everyone, please go check out Culture Cave. If you're into these shows, you will definitely enjoy Anthony's analysis, as you soon will find out here today. So thanks for joining me again. When I had finished watching all the way through, I was definitely eager to dive right back into a rewatch, just like with Dark. And I watched the first episode and took detailed notes, and it just blew me away how much they give you in the first 5 minutes. And I wrote a script for a video, which I don't even know if I'll make now, because I was going to do a series of produced videos on 1899, and now it seems tragically.
I know. I'm still sad about it.
Wake up, Anthony! Wake up! Wake up! This is just a dream. Dark's not, or 1899 is not really canceled.
I wish. Jeez.
I do think there's a chance that we could see it continued. It's got so much interest, and it's so compelling of a story. Hopefully, people like us talking about it, people on social media will show someone that there's interest to hear the rest of this, but we'll see.
Don't let the flame die. Don't let the flame die. Exactly.
And that is, by the way, one of the things that we're here to talk about. If there's an overarching topic for today is, what were they doing? Where was this show going? And I mean that in like every sense. So I've got a couple things here. Anthony, you did a video, 33 unanswered questions. I've snagged a few of those that I thought would be good discussion points, or that I might have a little theory about or something. Cool. Of course, there's the portrait in the Great Hall. It's got a bunch of Greek mythology on it, and you went into that in good detail. So I made a couple notes on that. And then, like I said, I've got this breakdown of the first 5 minutes that I went into. The first 5 minutes is a good way to get into like all the themes of the thing. But let me ask you in an open-ended way, what do you think they were doing with this show?
Yeah, so 1899, I think that they made no secret about the idea that they were basing the show on, or they had an initial idea about communities rupturing, the idea of, political systems around the world sort of tending more right at this moment. And then they were thinking about that. And I believe that where they were going with 1899, the overarching theme is going to be about education and waking up out of a monotonous cycle of life. So I think that, yes, we do have the simulation and this really high concept sci-fi going on. But I think at the end of the day, it's about transition. It's about a journey. So we are going from Europe to America in 1899. We are making a transition to the new world. Then it's revealed at the end of season 1 that we're making a transition across to a literal new world in the spaceship Prometheus. I think that where the show is going physically potentially could be something like the transition of humanity to become some sort of hive mind, or the transition of humanity to become to upload onto an AI. Now that's a high concept thing, but in terms of the actual theme and the importance of like the humanity. I think it's about the transition of someone going from an avoider to becoming a seeker, which is what they say in the show.
That's very well said. So yeah, okay. So I definitely love that you picked up on the parallel. You even asked the question, why is The Sims set in 1899? And your answer was, well, because it's a storyline that's similar to what the space colonists are doing, assuming that is real, which we'll get into that question. Is that one real or not? So yeah, I love that. And I think you've got it exactly right there. As far as they are being prepared to do something. I thought of the hive mind thing. It's more of a fantasy idea. It's in some sci-fi as well, but they're definitely. It feels like they've borrowed that element of dealing with the past from Dark, because all the people are obviously, we're dealing with our past again, these characters, but it does seem to be in preparation for a transition. So my first idea is that the spaceship is real and that they are space colonists, okay? And what they're doing in the simulation and what the simulation is supposed to be doing, it seems like there's been a wrong turn taken, but it does seem to me that the simulation is intended to help people deal with their trauma. And there's so many clues about this, right? Okay. I'll throw a couple out and then kick it to you. But obviously, as soon as you see that the room number is the same in the psych ward and in her room. So that tells you these rooms are kind of like psych wards. Then we have more opening scene in her room, looking in the mirror, reinforcing her own identity. I am Maura. I am from here. I'm real. I know what's going on. Yeah. So she's in her own head. And then we look, what's the monster under the bed? Yeah. Well, it's your trauma. It's the worst memory that you have. That's the thing that terrifies. That's the monster under the bed. Very good visual storytelling. So it seems to me like these rooms are analogous to therapy rooms or psych wards or whatever. And all of these people are in this simulation. They're dealing with their identity as constructed based on their past self. So, for example, Henry keeps saying, they keep doing the same stuff. They keep making the same mistakes. We got to run it again, okay? Yeah. So it's almost like we're hoping that these people can break out of their old identity, which is tied to their trauma, and make a new decision of some kind. And that, of course, is healing and growth. So this really feels like these people are on this spaceship in like a therapy simulation, because space colonies are hard. Any science fiction that deals with space colonies, there's always infighting and power plays, and everyone's personal problems come up in the spaceship. It's a closed environment, whether you're in the ship or on the colony on a hostile planet. So you want everybody to be well-adjusted, right?
Yeah.
So that's my first idea about what is going on with the simulation and the sort of personal layer to it.
I think you're hitting on a lot of points that I agree with there. I think that the idea that the spaceship is real is definitely one avenue they could go down, because what I learned from Dark was I don't believe these creators would do something that we expect. And I think we all expect that the 2099 was going to be a simulation as well. I think we all expect that. So therefore, in my opinion, there's two things to do. First thing is to say, actually, no, this is real. The 2099 is not a simulation. Or you reveal that it's a simulation immediately, and then season 2 is completely different again, and we had no idea. So that would be the two ways they could subvert the expectation there. In terms of the trauma under the bed, I think you're right in terms of that. I would also add in the element as well. If you're talking about the idea of someone being a seeker and an avoider, and how do you stay an avoider? Well, in the world, how we get people to continue these cycles of trauma is to sort of trap them in this fear, and like they don't actually rise above the fear. Now, you could look at that politically, or you could look at that personally. If you're trapped within a cycle of trauma, or you're trapped within, if you're not actually seeking outside help, the chance of actually, coming to some sort of conclusion with that trauma, or sort of moving on and being able to, come to terms with it, is actually quite low, in my opinion. So I think you are right. And I think it all does lead into this idea of transitioning from being an avoider to a seeker. I think that really is where it was going.
And you could see that built into their fake 1899 memories and storylines. They're all running from stuff. So that's very obviously a theme of what's going on. They're running not only from their personal trauma, but from literal past history or whatever. So yeah, it's their, you can see the themes are carrying across the levels of storytelling.
Oh,
now,
definitely.
as far as the simulation thing goes, is the ship real?
Yeah.
So what we all expect is for a series of reveals. We know how Dark went. Every time they drop a bomb on you, it's only a couple more episodes before, you thought you knew how to play the game, but you really don't yet. So
exactly.
revealing that the spaceship is yet another simulation, like you said, is almost too predictable. And they really didn't spend very long before revealing that we are in a simulation. Like, they were giving you clues in the first episode. It's basically out of the bag by the third episode that we're in a sim. So that wasn't even the big twist, okay?
Yeah.
The twist was that the sim is on a spaceship.
Yeah. That was the big twist at the end, yeah.
So as far as what the next level of twists are going to be, the same twist isn't a twist. Like, it's another sim. That's not really surprising. So the thing is, the Black Pyramid is on the planet that we're going to.
That would be cool, yeah.
Which means somebody's been there before, whether it's us or someone else. And we've seen that this show is wearing its influences right on its sleeve. So The Matrix, Alice in Wonderland, stuff like, the open, Total Recall. But obviously this is going the direction of some of the alien stuff with the spaceship named Prometheus. And we're going towards a planet with a pyramid. And the whole idea of like getting mysterious coordinates when they were at sea. They're like, where are we going? Well, that happens in Aliens, like your buddy said, like Conrad said. So
the Prometheus ship as well is something to really be dug into, because in my opinion, something has happened on this ship, obviously, right? So let's work in the realm of it being real. I'm not fully sold on that, but I do believe that there has to be some sort of there has to be some sort of difference there. It can't just be a simulation and revealed at the end of season 2. They wouldn't do that. But having said that, I think that the fact that the Prometheus ship, the spaceship is called Prometheus, and then there was like the Prometheus in the simulation, the Prometheus that they were going over to, and they found the boy on there and stuff. I think that something has happened on the Prometheus spaceship, and basically the Prometheus cruise ship, or I don't know what you would call it, a steamship, in the simulation is actually the echo of that ship. So I think Ike Larson was the captain of the spaceship Prometheus. I don't believe that actually the Project Kerberos, which keeps repeating itself, I don't believe that the Prometheus was also a project on a steamship. I think that the steamship Prometheus within the simulation is actually alluding to something that happened on the spaceship in real life.
I think that's right too. And I think if you look at Ike, remember, everybody's being forced to deal with their trauma, so hopefully they can make a different decision, according to my theory. So Ike, what is Ike's decision point? Whether or not to turn back, right? It's whether or not to turn back. It's whether or not to go and investigate something that, like, continue on your mission or deviate and investigate the ghost ship. He's being given different directions. He's got to decide which one to do. So it almost seems like he must have made a mistake.
Yeah, definitely. I think he did. And I think that maybe that's because obviously if these characters are on the spaceship, therefore the 1899 setting isn't actually literal. So therefore his family burning within the house, that might be something that he did on the Prometheus ship, and that might be analogous to that situation.
That was my instinct as well. Yeah. I think all these memories are basically fake because they're tied to the 1899 reality, like a house burning down. That's a thing that would happen back then. So like, I think there's maybe it's a stand-in for some different trauma. Yeah, that's more likely to be. So it could be Earth burned, or people on the ship burned, or
it could be like literally that, like the people were put into the simulation against his will, and that's sort of them burning down. I also think that mentioning Maura, saying her name in the mirror, Maura Franklin, I am Maura Franklin. I just literally had an idea that I've never thought of. So here you go, David. Here's a little a fresh one for you.
Cheers to Ike and Maura here.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, I think that I actually just had a really cool thought. What if the reason? So her name is Maura Henriette Singleton. Now, my friend Conrad on our breakdowns he thinks that actually her name is just Henriette Singleton, and Maura Franklin is actually someone else. Now, because Maura Franklin's name was on the Prometheus list. So if her name is not really Franklin, so why would her name Maura Franklin be on the Prometheus list? Now, this is my thought. I think Kieran, or whoever actually, made the stuff go down on the Prometheus spaceship, plugged her into someone else's terminal. So I think actually potentially she was put into a simulation she wasn't supposed to be in, maybe. So I think that might be an idea there.
That's very interesting. She is different from everybody else. And I think that's the point of the tea drinking, by the way, which was one of your unanswered questions. The tea drinking is there to show that everybody else is fully enmeshed in the simulation, and they don't even notice when they do something that's programmed. They just carry on. She's the only one that's like, what the fuck just happened? Because everybody else, even the people that we know are definitely real, and they're in the pod at the end of the last episode. Those people all drink the tea too. So I think it shows, and Maura is like, she's not enmeshed in the simulation fully, and that's why Daniel's trying to like wake her up and stuff.
Yeah, she's out of step as well. And Daniel's a really interesting character. I think the actor did a fantastic job with that character.
He's my favorite character. Yeah, that's why.
He's my favorite character too. But I think at the end, at the very end, we're sort of been a bit scattershot here. But this show that gets you excited and gets you,
it's like, all right, yeah.
But I think that at the end, whenever he says she's about to leave the simulation and wake up in what I believe is maybe not her terminal, I think that when she says, "Well, Daniel, will you be there?" and he says, "I'm always there," but when she wakes up, he's not there. And that made me start questioning, like, she's the creator of this. Is Daniel actually a real person? Is Elliot actually a real person? We don't actually know these things. And the fact that he says, "I'm always there," the way he said it, felt more like an ever-present, piece of code, maybe? I'm not sure. But that made me question it.
So one of the things that you threw out that I wanted to come back to was the idea that what they're being prepared for is to upload their consciousness to a computer. So this is something that Westworld obviously dealt with. And that's another show that this show is, whispering at or hollering at occasionally. So I do think that's a possibility, whether it's a hive mind or just the Philosopher's Stone immortality threads that are being laid down, that's where that's going. That could be. I do think that, so in the simulation, there's the mysterious black substance. It looks like living tourmaline, essentially. Black tourmaline.
Geez, you're touching it. You must not be real.
Are we even here? I do think there's a real substance. And I think that it's tied to that planet and that pyramid. And I think it enables some kind of technology. So a little similar to Dark, but I think they're going to use that idea again in a way. So I don't know if it's the space travel or the consciousness manipulation, but I do think there's something on the planet that has to do with consciousness. And to get back to the opening question, what is the show about? I think consciousness is like the first answer, self-perception and self-awareness, right?
Yeah. Well, definitely coming to terms with that and being able to find out who you are in the darkness. I think that's one thing which we are seeing. Consciousness, and also I think existence again. I think even Jan Friese said in an interview that it was about why are we here? And I think they seem to have this this worm in their brain of this question, why are we here? Because I think definitely Dark had that as well. My wife is an artist, and she said, I can't remember some famous artist quoted this, and they said, an artist is just working on the same project their whole life. So I think that we are definitely seeing that in these creators. They're just constantly sort of trying to find the answers to the same questions.
I definitely think that's true. And as far as so the opening poem, you've talked a lot about it. There's a line in there that I noticed that I want to harp on a little bit. So the brain is wider than the sky, for put them side by side. The one the other will contain with ease, and you beside. That last line, and you beside. So we're comparing the brain and the ocean, not a new thing, right? The subconscious or the mind to the ocean or the sky, similar idea. And you beside. So and the brain is bigger because it can comprehend the ocean, and it has room for self-awareness as well.
Yes.
So the brain isn't just thinking about the ocean, it's aware that it's a person who is thinking about the ocean. And that extra level of awareness is the wake-up part that we're trying to get to here. All right? So we're trying to get people to wake up out of the simulation. And you did a really good job of highlighting Plato's cave, meaning that the real meaning of Plato's cave is education. It's a waking up that you can't quite see. It's not as simple as like turning around or tearing down a veil. It's gaining an awareness through time of something that isn't obvious. Okay. And so that is kind of like Moore is trying to wake up, but all she can see is the ship. So it's like, well, where am I waking up to? But she knows there's some other level of awareness that she's trying to seek out. So I agree with everything you said as far as the education, awareness, and existence. It makes me think of like, well, I think, therefore I am. So awareness being tied to existence and kind of intrinsically.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I think therefore I am definitely came to mind for me as well. I think that the idea that you put forward there of the idea of the like you beside in terms of like the ocean and you beside, it really actually highlights the idea that you have your brain, your consciousness, and then your physical self as well. For me, so like, what are we? Are we a physical being, or are we a consciousness trapped within a physical vessel? And I think that that's something which also alludes to the potential of going down the idea is, can your consciousness exist without your physical vessel? Obviously, and also this whole simulation takes place within the consciousness, within the mind, and the physical vessel is merely just plugged in somewhere. So I think that's really, really cool. And I think that is a big question as well in terms of the existence. Like, if you were to be put on a computer and your AI, you were uploaded and you became some sort of AI or whatever, is that still existence? Is that still human existence? It's a big question. And obviously, there's no answer for that.
Yeah, I do think anytime you get into cloning or copying consciousness, you get into that question of, well, is this still me? Is this...
Yeah.
So I definitely think that's being asked. In a way, this reminds me of A Song of Ice and Fire. A Song of Ice and Fire for fantasy is like all of the above. It's all of the themes. It's all of the tropes. It's all of George's influences. And part of the staggering scope of A Song of Ice and Fire is how many things, Marvel Comics, classic mythology, medieval history, all woven together with a few references to the Giants and Patriots and NFL sports teams, just all kinds of shit.
Right, yeah.
So 1899, I feel like it's doing that too. Like, it's all here. All of the interesting sci-fi ideas are tied together, and in a way, they're pushing beyond all of them by creating a unified story of that's going to involve aliens, space travel, consciousness manipulation, simulations, the idea of waking up. So let's go back to that. Waking up, what is real? And it's interesting that the show starts with the end of a cycle. We know the end of the cycle is when Maura is tied to the chair and Henry injects her and she forgets and starts over. So that's what's happening at the beginning. We're seeing the end of a loop, and then the loops start over. And what's interesting is after she's injected, we hear Henry's voice saying, "Wake up," just like a hypnotherapist would wake you up from a session. But instead, she's waking up into a dream instead of from a dream. So it's this sort of inverted hypnosis at the beginning, right?
Yeah, that's really cool. Actually, I didn't even think about that, the idea of waking up into a simulation, into a dream. Yeah, that's really cool. Obviously, the first few episodes, you don't know, is it a dream? Is it a simulation? Is this all happening on a computer? Is it a video game? We don't really know. But that's a really, really cool idea, the idea that waking up into a dream. I never even thought of that.
And that's another thing that leads me to therapy, because hypnotherapy, that's what it's for. So if they're being hypnotized into this dream here, like, what's the point of it? It's to work through stuff, inevitably.
Yeah. Well, if you were to take the idea of the mental institution and the mental health, which her father worked on, then that is actually what it's all about. It's about getting someone through that. And there's allusions even to her mother began to forget things. Now, we don't actually know if she forgot things through some sort of illness like dementia, or was it actually that she got so lost within her own mind that she was unable to remember her own family. So I think that's the tie to mental health is definitely there. But at the same time, I think that might actually end up being one of those things, or would have ended up being one of those things, which is like a lesson for us as the audience to take as well, whereas the themes are much bigger than that in terms of like its existence and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because these are like building blocks.
Yeah.
A lot of these initial revelations are essentially, it's not, this isn't the end, guys. That's just where we're, it's a simulation. Good job. You're keeping up. Now
we
let's
got
go.
it.
Next step, you know? So.
Yeah, I think as well. I always say about mystery shows, especially these creators give you. They're really good at like making the reveals really jaw dropping, but at the same time, they give you enough clues that eventually, even if it's 10 minutes before the reveal happens, you're sort of already thinking it's coming. Because I think I'm a big believer in what makes mystery shows so good is that people think that they're really smart and solving them, but at the same, but like, so when you're watching it and you think, I think that's that, I think he's that guy, and then whenever it happens, you're like, told you that was that guy. And I think that basically they are really good at laying breadcrumbs which don't seem obvious, and therefore you feel really good when you get things right, you know?
Yeah.
I think they actually have mentioned in interviews before that they like their shows to be viewable on many levels. So they want people to be able to watch their shows who don't really want to think too hard. They'll still get something from it, but they also want like the detectives who want to watch the show and figure it out to get something from it too, you know?
And I think maybe if there's any criticism of 1899, it's probably that. If you weren't willing to think deeply about it, it might have just been a little too confusing. Especially the first 2 episodes, so much is happening, and it starts real fast, and you're just like, what the hell?
Yeah, I think what I say is I think the pace of 1899's season 1 was dark season 3. I think they picked up where they left off in terms of pace, and I really, really can see that as a criticism. In terms of dark, if people told me that they stopped watching after 2 episodes, I don't know what you're doing. But 1899, like if you're just a I call them lay people who aren't into dark as much as me, because it's like a religion to me, you know. But I would imagine those people who just like want to watch a show just to sort of relax in the evening time, I can see them turning off 1899 after an episode or 2, because not only do you have, you know, all of the strange things going on, like the visions, you've got different languages, you've got confusing characters who you have no idea what's going on with them. Even we still don't. And then you've also got I think that's like 17 main characters or something like that. So I get it.
And for me, the style is also jarring intentionally at times, not always, but at times. Some of the cuts, the way the music comes in, the theme song itself, it's meant to like trouble you a little bit, and that's part of the whole storytelling. But it is a little bit of a challenge, almost like a prog rock album or something. Like they are challenging the viewer. So they erred on the side of being true to their art, as opposed to like also making something that's easily consumable. And next time, maybe they'll skew more towards that. So there's an initial. I mean, we can talk about movies and streaming some other time and all that, but I guess let's stick with the story. So Anthony, here's something I want to throw at you. I mentioned that to me, the first thing the show is about or whatever is not only awareness, but specifically self-identity, because they're doing something really interesting. You just mentioned earlier, are we still ourselves if we're uploaded to a computer? Which means we're really asking the question, what is the self? Okay. So one way to define ourself is as a collected, all of our memories. Like when we think about who we are, it's everything that we've done. It's where we've come from. It's what we like and don't like. It's the choices that we've made. All those things together form our mental picture of self-identity, who we are. But on 1899, they're messing with that because they've replaced people's memories. Maura is saying, what have you done to my memories, Father? But everybody probably has fake memories implanted in them because they're not really from 1899. So at the very least, they're modified versions of their real life experience. And so we're analyzing their choices, okay? Yeah. But their choices, what am I trying to say? It's like their self-identity is being challenged. Like, is it their memories of what they've done, or is it the next choice that they make? And when you make that choice, where does that come from? It's like your inner compass or your values or some part of yourself that isn't your memories, but rather like your instinct. And so those two components of the self are being sort of compared and separated and teased out. Like, which one is it? Like, I don't know, your thoughts on that. I just think that's really interesting how they're messing with that. And also, to finish my thought, I'm sorry, it's a little scattered, but
no, of course.
To the therapy thing. So we're all these people are being forced to deal with this trauma, whether it's fake trauma or modified trauma or whatever. And Henry is looking for them to make a new choice. So it's almost like we need to leave behind the old self-identity, which is made up of our old choices, and find a way to grow so that we can make a new choice. I feel like that's the personal layer of all this. Go ahead.
Actually, yeah. So I would frame it slightly like basically the same idea, but I think you could also put it around like the idea of a moral code. So like the idea would be that if you take away someone's memories or if you mess with them and you change who they are fundamentally, does their moral code change? Do the decisions they make change?
Thank you.
And I think, and I think that I think that also the experiment could be, where do morals come from? So there is obviously a lot of religious elements in this show, and there are some people who believe that morals come from religion 100%. There's some people who think it's innately within a human to be good and to make right choices. So I think that those questions are always all being asked as well. I think that the fact that all the characters have a letter from what we assume is Kieran, Mora's brother, mean that he is carrying out some sort of experiment. He's taken the reins of this simulation, so to speak, and he's doing something, and he's trying to analyze their decisions, as you say, analyze their moral code or why they are doing what they're doing. The fact that everyone got a letter means that he is analyzing everyone, not just Mora,
Yeah, I definitely think that's true. And I definitely think that they're showing us that Ike is like close to waking up as well, potentially, right? He got taken out of the sim by Daniel and his little palm kit or whatever, but
yeeted back to the forest.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of the palm kit and Daniel, I've got two things I wanted to throw at you theory-wise. One is having to do with Daniel, and the other is with Aida. Okay.
Oh yeah, Aida. Yeah, Aida is a really interesting character to me. I've got a few things to say about her too, so I'm interested to hear what you say.
Yeah. So Daniel is obviously the Hercules character. He is the one who is going in to rescue. He's battling challenges. That's Daniel. Yeah. But think about the biblical name Daniel also going into the lion's den. Very similar. Like Daniel is going into the lion's den by entering the simulation, which is kind of a torture trap, but he's entering it willingly to rescue somebody and complete a mission. So I like that layering of like, he's a little bit Daniel and a little bit Hercules. And I like how doesn't Hercules even battle lions in one of his labors?
Yes, he does, and actually, I think that it's funny you mentioned the meaning of the name Daniel, because the first thing I do with these creators is anytime they release like cast lists and stuff, I go and Google the meaning of the names, and they. You got to
come back to Mora. I got stuff on her. Go ahead.
Yeah, so like they love the symbolism of the names. I think, as you say, like just to sort of lay it out for people who haven't maybe seen my video, Daniel is Hercules who's going into. I suppose the underworld to set free Prometheus. There is also Prometheus is chained to the rock in Greek mythology, which is like Mora is continually having to go around this cycle.
So I think that not only I was going to say this to you, like I think that like when you're trying to figure out who's Prometheus, who's Nyx, and this and that, I think that there's going to be multiple answers, like because they're really working with the themes of these stories. So. When Angel passes the cigarette, that's a Prometheus moment. But also when Mora goes down to heal and bring that medical knowledge, which is, because remember, the fire of the gods is also a stand-in for knowledge.
Yes,
and
of course.
Knowledge is power. So, because Prometheus is bringing like the knowledge of how to make fire, kind of, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, and I view it as like Mora was like the creator of this simulation originally. That's what we're told. So the idea is like I viewed it as her bringing the knowledge of like AI systems or bringing the knowledge of uploading consciousness or something like that.
I also think that's Nyx though as well, because Nyx gives birth to everything, all these dreams, day, night, all this stuff. So I think that she is Nyx as well. I think you're right about that. But
yeah, that was my initial theory. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To come back to the Prometheus Cerberus thing. So Cerberus, the Hellhound, obviously keeps everyone trapped in Hades. Also Prometheus is like guarded by Cerberus, and that's Hercules has to overcome Cerberus, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. The Prometheus in this story, the first one, is all the people, okay? Because they're all trapped. Everyone in the simulation is trapped and being tortured in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And so
cool.
we know that they are on a spaceship called the Prometheus. But in the sim, they're on the Kerberos. So it's kind of like the Kerberos sim is trapping the people from the Prometheus ship.
They have to defeat Cerberus or Kerberos before they get access to Prometheus. Yeah.
That's right. So there's a guard dog. The sim itself is a guard dog, which is very cool. And of course, Ike, really cool, as the captain, also plays that guard dog role because he's telling he's telling people they got to do what they don't like to do. That's tough. And then he just walks off like, tough shit, guys. Like he's totally the warden. You know,
he is actually, and that was one thing that I found was funny was like, for example, like one of his crewmen is called Franz, and that character was just like trying to do well and live up to his role, but Ike just kept being like, no, I'm going to take these two new guys over to the Prometheus with me. You can just stay here. It's almost as if Ike was, as you say, starting to wake up, and therefore he wasn't viewing the idea of rank in the ship as important anymore. He was just sort of doing what he wanted to do and using the people and the methods he needed to do it. That's how I sort of felt.
It's very, I don't know if have you read A Song of Ice and Fire?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, so it's very Jon Snow at the Wall once he gets the letter and he starts just sort of freelancing. Everyone's like, wait a minute, you can't just do that, buddy. So
yeah, it's all of a sudden your priorities are way larger, and the sort of the normal day-to-day rules aren't really that important anymore. Yeah, I think that's a really good analogy.
So, Aida. I read speculation that she's a program, and I started thinking about that. And then I looked at her name, Aida. She is an analog to digital converter. That's what she is. Because an analog to digital converter is written A/DA. And if you just take that slash and turn it, it's AIDA. And she's always doing the communication role. You highlighted the fact that she's bringing the news that the ship is turned around to other people. We don't even know how she knows that, but somehow she knows. Yeah. And then she's telling more stuff. She's telling the story of the ghost ship, the people that killed the whale and were turned into ghosts. She's always communicating. And then people are telling her, don't tell mom this, don't tell so-and-so that. It's always about communicating and talking. And it answers the question of, why did Daniel kill her? It makes no sense. Daniel's a nice guy. Why did he kill this child? Why is she the only child on the boat besides Elliot? Well, it's because she's a program. She is the analog to digital converter. Because, of course, brains are analog. They're in a digital simulation. So all the information that goes to anyone's brain is going through some sort of analog to digital converter. And we've got this girl communicating, and Daniel's like, nope, can't have that. We got to take you out first. So I don't know where that goes, but it must serve a purpose for whatever Daniel's trying to do with the simulation, which he seems to be trying to hack it and break it or something. So your thoughts?
Well, just to work on your fantastic, thoughts there, and now take a bit of credit for them because I'm going to add to them. But it's you who laid the groundwork here. I think that you are hitting on something really, really good there. And I think if you were to think about why did he kill her, I suppose it's because without her, then the harmony on the boat ceases to exist, and that's the beginning of the disgruntlement of the lower decks, because they no longer have a conduit to hear the news of what's happening, and therefore they're cut off from everybody, and therefore they start to fear what's happening above them, but also start to assume the worst of the intentions of the people above them. And I think that she acted as a conduit between. And I think as well, something that points to me, for me anyway, sometimes a little tiny detail means that I never stop thinking about a particular theory. So for example, with Aida, I will never think that Aida is not a program, purely because of the moment when she died, and Cresta went to try and open the window to let her soul out. He couldn't open the window, and therefore her soul didn't leave. So she is not a real person. She is in the program forever.
That makes sense. And I think there are probably other people in the program forever. And that gets back to this whole idea that maybe the endpoint is uploading people, and that's the technology here that's being chased after or researched how to do that right. We talked about the psychology ward thing, the idea that the trapdoors are the monster under the bed and it leads to your worst memory or whatever. Here's the thing. Around episode 3, I began to think like all of these people have got to be laying on a table somewhere, hooked up to the same simulation, because these rooms, not only do they represent the sense of self of each person, but literally the trapdoors lead to their memories. And these people can run in and out of each other's memories. And so what I think is happening is that the simulation itself is powered by the brains in part. And what these people are doing is literally running into each other's brains when they go into those trapdoors and crawl through each other's memories. I think that the sim itself, the network of it, is mapped out onto the brains. And that these people in the circle in the room, they're literally running into each other's memories and shit. What do you think of that?
Oh no, I think that's a cool idea, and I do agree with you. It's like the idea that once you're plugged in, it's a little bit like this is a really strange analogy here. It's a little bit like Wreck-It Ralph, like where all the arcade machines are plugged in, and therefore all the little characters from the arcade can go into like the main hub of the electricity and talk to each other, and then they can go into each other's games. I think potentially to maybe that's the only way they can compute the actual coordinates of where they're sending the Prometheus spaceship or something cool like that. Like they're using the power of the mind to compute something.
Right, because again, the Matrix is a huge influence here. And the Matrix obviously is harvesting the brain power of all these people hooked into the pods. And when Mora pops out, it's a very Matrix-like moment when Neo wakes up in his pod and he's like, oh my God, all these people are hooked into this thing.
Oh yeah,
it's very like that, only slightly less horrifying. It's more uncertain because we just don't know what's going on. But the fact that all these people are hooked up into these pods, there's a lot of brain power being spent, and that could be being used for something, absolutely. Because you have to wonder, why are they hooked in together? Like if they're just doing therapy in a sim, they could be in their own sims. They don't really have to be together. So it could be that they want to encourage the colonists to bond in the sim because they're going to know each other on the outside. But it could be that, again, there's a little bit of a repurposing of this program. And that originally, like, why would it be useful to be able to enter someone's memories? Well, if you were the therapist, it would be helpful to go inside the trauma memory with the person. Like you could go, if you were Ike's therapist, you'd go with Ike into the burning house and be like, okay, now breathe deep. You've got to let this go. Now tell your daughter that you love her. You'd walk, you'd hold their hand through the memory. That might be a good way to do therapy in the future. So maybe that's part of that function. But but then now they're all wandering through each other's memories. Like, I don't know.
It's sort of like maybe that was the original purpose of this. Oh no, they alluded to the idea of the original purpose was for Mora to sort of never lose her son, and therefore, like the idea is that you relive these memories, and maybe that now Kieran is repurposing it in some other way, which is allowing them to access each other's memories in some way. I think I do think that, and I think that maybe there is also the theme. At this point of, gaining back your individuality. Like the idea is like they're all collectively in this simulation now. They're like a collective hive mind, maybe not literally, but they're able to go into each other's minds. But the idea is about coming out of the simulation and regaining your individuality. I think that's a big theme as well.
So you just mentioned Mora, and there's this idea that's thrown out that, Mora created this so she could be with her son, who seems to be sick or even dead or something like that, about to die. So to me, that seems, I don't think an entire simulation technology was created for that purpose. Creating simulation technology on this scale is a long-term project funded by a corporation, et cetera, et cetera. What I think Mora did was she was perhaps the architect or the one working on it with a team, and then she saw a way to save her son. Or the ultimate purpose of the simulation is to get to a place where we can safely upload humans onto it, and it wasn't ready yet. but she was like, my son's about to die, so it's ready. And so that fits that scene where Daniel's like, don't do this, but he's not like throwing his body in the way. He's just trying to be like, you shouldn't do this. This isn't safe. But he himself must be torn about it as well, because he's not stopping her.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think like all that symbolism there is great. I think that the idea of Elliot being put into a system in order to, he wasn't supposed to be there. My thoughts on that are a little different. I think potentially Elliot might not exist as well. And I think that potentially Elliot might be maybe they were working on this technology to allow your brains to sort of go into the system, into a simulation. And potentially I think Elliot might be an AI that Mora created and then put into mix with brains like this, which wasn't supposed to happen. And therefore it didn't work. It didn't go properly. She was told to get rid of this AI and potentially then she locked it away because she didn't want it to die. So I think that Elliot might be actually like a creation of hers, not a child.
I could see that working. I definitely think that that's an idea that we should look for. Anytime we're dealing with AI, we've got to deal with that robot personhood question. Like, well, is the AI sentient? Does it have rights now? And I even heard you toss out the idea that Moore herself is the AI, and they're trying to get it to wake up into full consciousness throughout this whole program. I don't think that's the case, but I do think it's an interesting theory. And I think that there could be, like I said, at some point an AI that we have to think about its humanity or whatever.
Yeah. It's all cool stuff. I love the themes.
Now, Elliot, he is also doing a Prometheus thing, because when Mora and Ike go over to the Prometheus ship, the first thing that he does is hand Mora the pyramid. Now, the pyramid, obvious, a symbol for power and knowledge. That's the fire of the gods. So literally, the ship Prometheus is handing Mora a pyramid. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is that pyramid. It represents the awakening from the sim, the key out of the sim. But if we're thinking about awakening as in education and knowledge, again, we're right back to the idea that this is the mushroom of Alice in Wonderland. It's the Prometheus fire. It's the knowledge expanding tool. And the last thing I want to say about Elliot,
the pill from the Matrix as well, you could say.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that Elliot essentially is kind of like the white rabbit. Elliot gives her the pyramid, and that is essentially the beginning of her crawling down this rabbit hole of changing her reality, essentially.
Yeah. No, I see that. And definitely, obviously, we know that the theme of the Alice in Wonderland and the Rabbit is heavily implied within the opening credits theme as well. So I
could
see
like
that
crawling through tunnels, Anthony.
Yeah, exactly. They love crawling through tunnels.
Little doors and tunnels. That's where this all starts.
That's like Andreas Peachman signed up. He's like, first of all, I'm only signing this contract if there's a tunnel I can crawl through. Because if there's not, don't count me in.
No, it's the opposite. He was like, okay, but no tunnels. And they're like, yeah, tunnels. And it was like,
they tricked him into it.
Then I want nicer tunnels. I want black, shiny, fire hardened brick. None of this chiseling in the rock stuff. Yeah.
I want my tunnels to literally come out of nowhere in the sky. I want you to be able to just jump out of the tunnel from nothing. That was in his contract, I'm pretty sure, actually, now that you said that.
So what's up with the peeling back the wall and seeing all the wires, and what's up with that?
Yeah, that's a weird one, actually. And actually, now that we know that they're on a spaceship, it does actually look like the similar aesthetic they're going for on the spaceship itself. Because if you actually like pause the screen and look at the actual set, like the big wires are there and connecting in, and like the idea of like it's coming from each little pod and going into a central column. So the massive wires. It's interesting that in the sim you would actually literally have a direct link visually to the outside world, but perhaps like that's just like the inner workings of the sim. So therefore, it like that they don't actually put a nice veneer on that. It just represents, and it looks like what the world they came from was, because they didn't actually put any 1899 stuff on that. They just like said, this is the 2099 stuff will do. But yeah, it is interesting, definitely. And the way that Daniel's able to climb in and go to other parts of the simulation based, like he, in his mind, he knows where to go. That was really interesting to me, because if everything's in the mind here, then what's the metaphor for that? Like, what's he doing there?
Well, so to me, it seems like everything that's code has a visual representation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so some of the codes are people, some of them are objects.
Mm-hmm.
The machine that Daniel plays with, we see the first machine, and then the golden shiny one that drops down. It's newer looking technology, so it's a different kind of software. It's a different layer of programming. And so Daniel is essentially hacking all this stuff. So I think that essentially when you're crawling into the walls, that's the like core architecture of the sim being expressed inside the sim, because all the code has to be expressed visually in some way. I think that's essentially the rule that they're playing with. But really, they're doing it because it's fun. It's great fantasy stuff, just peeling open the walls. It's very Narnia, go in the back of the wardrobe. But it's just, it's great. I love it. I love the trapdoors in the middle of the sky. I mean, just like, how do we get out of here? I don't know. Let's just peel open the wall and just go.
Throwing something, it cracks the sky, and then you have to peel it back. It is really cool.
It's so
visually,
dreamlike.
Yeah, they've done such a good job with this show visually, and like the dreamlike nature of it, and like I think the volume really helped for that. Like, so they film this on a volume like The Mandalorian, and unlike The Mandalorian, they actually really tried to make it look real. So like they actually like only shoot in particular lightings and stuff, which really helps. And I think the actual cinematographer of this just got nominated for an award, actually. So that really matters as well. But yeah, the production design on these shows, like, what about the gadgets as well? Like the actual little machines. Dark's gadgets were hard to top, but the actual like little pod thing, the palm or whatever they call it, the shell, they call it the shell. Yeah, like the little like sort of little game you play as a kid. And then you've got like the pyramid itself. You've got the big machines on the wall, and then like the quantum computer sort of thing that drops out of the roof. I just love whoever they've got designing their props really deserves more money, because they are amazing.
Well, I think it starts with them. It's such a core part of their storytelling that like that's got to be. And I know Bo does like animation and stuff, so I'm sure he's sketching some of this out. But obviously they also have a team to build them. So yes, that team needs a raise. I do like the dark machines a little better. That's not to slight 1899. It's just that like the coolest moment in television history to me was the reveal of Adam's bunker. When that thing opens up and you see all the stuff on the desks and you see the candles and the picture and Adam and all of it. And then that's only topped when you go into the next room and you see the towers and it's like, it's the most steampunk thing that's ever been made.
Yeah.
I die. So as far as the devices in 1899, I like that there's like rules to the sim, very much like in the Matrix, like the telephones or the portals in and out or whatever. Like there's rules to the program that you have to play by. So it's a little bit like a game. And so Daniel's got a controller and it can hack things, can kick people out of the game. Then I really love the part.
He's the mod.
I love the part where they tear into the kitchen cabinet and they pull out the drawer and there's this little controller thing that's completely different technology. Like,
that's cool. I love that as well.
They're really teasing into some fantasy. Like I mentioned Narnia, but this really are like child's fantasies, like little secret doors and hidden compartments in your grandparents' furniture. Like,
well, actually, the way they present it is like sci-fi has like a couple of different ways you can go. You can go like hardline sci-fi, like hard sci-fi, or you can go like fantasy sci-fi, like Star Wars or something, And I really feel like they're skirting the line here. Like the themes they're going for and like the actual presentation in some ways, they're trying to be like that sort of very realistic sci-fi. But then at the same time, as you say, there's all these little games and little props and things going on where they're sort of alluding to that more fantasy aspect of sci-fi as well. And I think it really works in every way. Do you know what I mean?
I really do. And I love the genre bending. because really sci-fi and fantasy are both pulling their inspiration from classic mythology. So
yeah, of course,
it's really, as far as the themes and the tropes and all that stuff. So,
and superhero movies too. Basically, any big genre. It is, as they say, we're telling the same stories over and over again in different ways. But the idea is like any of these big genre things, it's taking, as we've talked about many times, the human ideas and putting them into sort of putting a fresh coat of paint on them, which really, really make them enjoyable to watch.
that's why we're using all these things as building blocks. And I really would like to know where they were going and what kind of castle they were building on these building blocks. So,
well, here's hoping one day we will. I think I don't want to be so much of an optimist that I eventually make myself really disappointed, but I'd like to think at some point in some way we'll know where they were going. I'm not one of these people who just wants them to post a blog and I'll read it tomorrow. I'm willing to wait 10, 15, 20 years for something meaningful to be done. Having said that, it's a real sad situation, and I just hope one day we get the fulfilling culmination of these stories,
Yep. You couldn't have said it better. So, closing thought, and this is a little bit of trivia here, a little fun thing. So, we talked about Aida as being A/DA, analog to digital. Obviously, Kerberos with a K is the name of a kind of server authentication protocol. So the authentication protocol, essentially a guard dog software, so named after Cerberus. You see the idea. Mora, she says that she's from Moorfield.
Yeah.
Now, that word is crazy. So the word moor and then field. So think about a field of grass.
Yeah.
But there's always more of it. So it's a boundless field. And that makes you think of the sea and the stars, a field of stars, boundless fields, okay? Also, a field is an entry field in a line of computer code. So more field, we could be talking about essentially, Mora is making, she's the creator of the software, right?
Yeah, the entry to the universe, why? Well, that's the biggest theme. Why are we here? So the entry field could be where did humans and consciousness come from?
Right. You can see how the hacker puns are dovetailing back into the themes of the show. Then we've got morph field, as in morphing. Okay, because the interior of the ship is morphing. So Mora morph field. It's a very interesting name.
Yeah. I see exactly what you mean. Also, Moorfield is also a real place in Scotland where she also mentions that she grew up. So the idea that there's so much meaning in this word Moorfield, I like the idea of like they went, Moorfield's a really cool idea, and then they searched up and went, bingo, we know where she's from now,
Totally. So, and the name Mora, but let's look it up real quick.
Yeah, it means like of the sea, I think. So of the sea, which also leads into that, because the idea of like boundless sea, limitless sea as well. And another, I'm not going to attempt here to express this in any meaningful way, but my co-host on my channel, Conrad, he is actually an IT professional. Now, for Dark, I'm a mathematician. And I have a maths degree, and I'm a math teacher. So therefore, Dark really went down my area of expertise. Whereas this time, this show is where he went down his area of expertise, and he has pointed out the idea of the name Singleton. Now, that is something within the IT world as well, and the way he describes it is it's like the class of the program that wraps around everything else. So the idea that Mora Singleton is the creator was hinted at through that name as well. And my co-host Conrad has a lot of extra details, which we can maybe talk about one day with yourself. A lot of extra details as to how this name Singleton actually alludes to a lot of the stuff which the show could have been going to,
And of course, Singleton, ton is just town. So single town. These are space colonists headed to a foreign planet. There might only be one town on the planet.
Yeah, that is right.
Single town.
Well, so they're gonna go there and make Single Town.
Last thing I will ask you, Daniel reminds me of Stranger in that thinks he knows what's going on, but it's very possible that he doesn't know. I think he's honest, but I don't know that he knows what's going on for sure. Just the way that Stranger in season 1 did not, or really ever, actually.
He's actually very similar to Stranger. He shows up in an ominous way with ominous music. He wears dark clothes. He has a little interesting gadget. As he's very like Stranger, almost to the point where he could be a copy of the character, you know.
And he's obviously, his eyes like just twitching with pain and sorrow that he's trying to keep bottled up or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
So the question is, how much of what he tells Maura is true? Were they really married? We've talked about, is Elliot real or not? I do think the romance seems to be real. But let me ask you, I haven't finished my rewatch. When we see them together in bed in that futuristic apartment, is that inside the pyramid, or is it like looking at the pyramid? I felt like it was on that planet.
See, yes, I remember having that thought as well, actually. I think we did see something like that, whether or not it was in the main big pyramid. But yeah, there's definitely an allusion to that potential idea as well. I think that Daniel, in terms of whether he's a real person or whether their love is real or whether they really were married, I don't know, actually. And I'll tell you why. Because I think that there are connections being made between characters which we were going to learn the reason for them later. So, for example, like Clemence and Jerome, there was definitely some stuff there. So I think that there's more to that relationship outside of the simulation. And I think similar for Maura and Ike. I think there's more to the relationship of Maura and Ike. Now, whether that means Ike is truly Kieran, I don't believe that. Some people think it might be. Whether that means that Ike is actually her real husband and Daniel is some sort of ghost of him or something like that. There is definitely a relationship between Maura and Ike, which makes me question Daniel.
Yes.
I'm going to be honest.
I think I had the same feeling.
But yeah, in terms of the actual location of the room, I'm not quite sure, although it would be really cool if it was literally in that pyramid. I mean, what a cool room.
Yeah. And you have to wonder, like, is everybody that's interfacing with the simulation, do they have to be on the ship, or do they have a way of defeating space-time limitations so that people on either Earth or on the colony planet can be messing with the sim? That would be a feat of technology, obviously. But like I said, it could be that there is a black substance on the foreign planet that has enabled consciousness manipulation instantaneously like that. But otherwise, Daniel has to be running around on the ship somewhere if he's a real person.
Like that's why I was bringing up.
And the same for Henry. Henry's the other one.
Yeah, Henry. Yeah, well, Henry actually, I myself and Conrad have talked about that, and we think that Henry potentially might be just a manifestation of Maura's memories of her father. And I think that so when it's revealed that her name is Henriette Singleton, we're being told that she is Henry Singleton. Right. So therefore, her father might not have even been called Henry. Maybe, like probably was because she was named after him. But like the idea that he is in control is in no way, actually reality. She's the creator. And therefore, these ideas that Henry Singleton is in control is just her brain putting Henry Singleton in control because really it's her. She's Henry Singleton and she's the one in control of the simulation.
So it's a Fight Club thing almost.
Yeah. I think potentially. But I do think that, like, Daniel did say that Henry is just as trapped as everyone else. So I do believe that he is plugged in. I do believe that Anton Lesser, the actor, is going to be plugged into the simulation in some way.
I think so too.
But whether or not he's in any way in charge of anything, I don't know about that. Because so even the whole idea of him having this mental institution with his mother, like, who's his mother? Like, who's Maura's mother?
We have to question everything. The thing, and what I was questioning whether or not he was even a villain until he gave that speech about emotion and free will and rationality. That was a villain speech. He basically might as well have done this. So I do think when he talks about wanting to trap Maura inside the sim and he wants to get out, I do think I buy that. I buy that he was actually trying to get out and take control of the ship. And instead, Maura has gotten out. And now she has a chance to take control of the ship. And this is another reason why I think the ship is real, is because it's too interesting to think that there is political drama going on a ship outside the sim, and that Ike actually was a captain on one of these other ships, you asked the question, where was the third ship? There might be 3 ships. So there's one of these things could have been destroyed already or something. Maybe that was Ike's big fuck up, was that one of these ships is gone now because of him. But he's the only pilot, so they need him to still be a pilot. Who knows? Yeah. But I think that Henry is real, and I think he's in the sim. But it's interesting that he's in the sim in a different way because he's outside of the Kerberos thing.
Yeah, so they had him sending messages through this triangle messages. Right. And I did actually think to myself about at the very end scene when Kieran sends a message on the screen to Mora, says, "Welcome to reality." I did think to myself for a split second, is he sending these messages from a equivalent different level of reality or simulation? Like, is this the equivalent of the triangle messages, or is he just in another part of the spaceship? I don't actually know that. Although I did notice in that last scene that there was an empty pod. Did you notice that? So in the last scene, one of the pods is empty, and I'm assuming that is Kieran has escaped and taken control.
Okay, I didn't notice that. No.
Yeah, there's one of the pods has no one in it. Yeah.
So that could be Daniel. That could be Henry, or not Henry. It could be Daniel or Kieran. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's such an interesting little breadcrumb they threw in there, the idea that there was already one empty.
So one of the things that I was thinking about as far as where was this show going in season 2 and 3, in Dark, I noticed that we went back over the core events from season 1 and just took little different side branches off of them or saw different angles to the events, which reshaped our opinion. I do think they were going to do the same thing.
Back to the Future 2. The Back to the Future 2 situation, where you go back and re-experience the under the sea dance and all that. I think that what they could have been doing, if the space colony or the spaceship is the real world, then what we could have had was them re-entering, as you say, the simulation in another way, and potentially the simulation is now changed because Mora's no longer in it. And that could actually give you the satisfaction that now we're not just in a sci-fi on a spaceship, we are still within these simulations. We still need to break people out of them. So that could be a way of making 2099 real in a satisfying way.
Yes, and I think this is another one where you learn the mistake of Westworld. Okay, so I was okay with Westworld switching out of the park and into real life for the most part. But even though I was mentally okay with it, it still did lose something because it totally changed the environment of the show. And you spent 2 years getting your viewers used to how it looks and feels. And it's almost like a band changing their style. It's like, well, we're still writing about the same stuff, but we changed our instruments and our style. And it's like, well, I don't like it anymore as much. It's different. So
different feeling, different aesthetic. Yeah, I get it fully. I get exactly.
So I think they were going to do more like Dark, in that we were going to definitely go back to the ship in season 2 and season 3. Also, they spent a lot of money building the ship and creating the graphics for the volume for the ship. So I think they weren't going to change the aesthetic. They were going to bring in a new aesthetic, which is the spaceship reality. But I do think we were going back on the Kerberos. And I've got so many questions. Like, the Prometheus was obviously drowned and brought back out of the water. There's seaweed and rust and everything. And I'm making a joke here with my, I got to cover my screen, but this is my porthole. You can see there's fish out the porthole. So the ship's been underwater and back up. Like, I do think that you're right about the Prometheus ghost ship basically just being part of the Kerberos sim, not its own thing. But the ship graveyard does imply that, like, each time you run a sim, there's a new ship that goes into the graveyard. So I kind of wonder, like, why was the Prometheus drowned and resurrected? What happened there? I really liked Conrad's theory that, like, it was Bermuda Triangle stuff, before he was onto the sim idea. That was cool. So what were they doing with that?
No, I think that ship graveyard is literally just like a backup device where you're backing up the previous iterations so that you can remember or you can go back and have a look at them. So, like, the idea, like, that's just the storage area. So, like, I think all those ships in there, in my opinion, are just copies of the Prometheus and the Kerberos. So it's like every iteration of the Kerberos simulation has 2 ships. So every time you're finished, you just pop them into the backup system.
That makes sense. Or do they take the old ship from the last one and run it back through the whirlpool to be the next ghost ship?
So the way, so that I've thought about that before as well. And the only way that would work for me in terms of my understanding at the minute of the show is if you change the name of the Kerberos to the Prometheus each time. Because I really do feel like the characters going and trying to find something out from the Prometheus is important as an analogy to what's happening with the spaceship Prometheus. So I don't really see if like they were going to then do another iteration of this, but this time they called it, I don't know, Project Athena, for example, and they had a ship called Athena, and then they were going back to the Kerberos to see what happened. I would be a little let down by that because that would in no way tie to the spaceship Prometheus to me. I don't really see
I think you're right. It should be the repeating renaming of it. Yeah.
Because
it's the role. The name comes from the role. The Kerberos is a watchdog. The Prometheus has the secrets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I've always felt about it as well.
Cool. Okay, so that makes a little more sense. It's literally everything in the sim is just an expression of code, and so that's literally the backup folder. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I love that. That's what I think. Yeah.
So like the people weren't supposed to end up there, but they did.
So they're not meant to be there. So now they're in the server. They're like in the server which holds the backups. Or like the previous, like the same.
Yeah, so Daniel did that. Daniel made that happen.
Yeah. So Daniel has, because also they're talking about like a particular moment as well, whenever they're saying like, half an hour or 30 minutes until the transfer. I think that was Henry talking to who I call Conor McGregor, but it's actually Sebastian. Daniel was talking to Henry was talking to him and said about 30 minutes until the transfer. I believe that means just transferring the data into the backup systems. But obviously there is a connection there all the time because Daniel, as you say, was able to send these people there, which actually means now that their consciousness, if we're going to go along our line of thinking, their consciousness is sort of not kind of in the current simulation anymore. It's kind of in the backup servers. And maybe in the second season, they were going to have the people who were now survived the simulation and are in the backup server are going to be able to talk to Mora in the spaceship from different parts because they're now like in the actual workings of the spaceship. That would be cool.
Cool. Well, I think that's probably a good place to leave it for now. This has been a ton of fun, Anthony. Thanks so much for coming on.
No problem. Thank you very much. I've been a long time admirer of yourself, and the fact that you've asked me to do this is absolutely brilliant. We've tried to set things up in the past. Our schedules have never really made it work, but it's so much fun talking about these sort of shows with you. Hopefully, there'll be more in the future.
Yeah, I'd love to. Like I told you, I'm happy to come on anytime. So. Yeah, just schedule me up.
The Culture Cave. If you're like me and you can't get enough of Dark and 1899, the Culture Cave is where we are.
Your homie Conrad's really funny too. Anthony does a thing where he does a rewatch with somebody who hasn't watched it yet, while Anthony has done it. So there's a little letting the newbie guess about what's happening, right?
And then we like especially for Dark and for 1899 so far, but we all know how that might happen now. But what we did with him was we would all be sitting there sort of laughing. I would have my poker face on. Sometimes the predictions he made were crazy. Sometimes he got it on the money. If anyone's seen Dark, my friend Conrad got every big reveal right in Dark. So if you want to go and listen to our breakdowns of that, I'm not even joking you. He got everything. So come and listen to my friend Conrad's crazy theories.
Yeah, I think people know if I'm recommending something strongly that it's high quality stuff. So you've heard Anthony today on the show. So yeah, everybody definitely go check out Culture Cave. We'll be seeing more of each other in the future. Thanks a lot. And see you next time, everybody.
See you later.